Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm so sorry I was late. Um, I literally just finished getting my hair dyed, and it's I am playing Liu this weekend at the con, and it needs to be the correct color. So here's hoping. It kind of looks a little dark right now, so here's hoping it lightens up. But anyway, welcome to Peerless Book 4, Part 5. I'm excited to say we actually get to finish Book 4 this week. And then we will be on to the last book, which we've been doing this series / this author quite a bit. It's been literally months. So it's going to be so strange when we start a new series. But speaking of that, we actually have the next voting poll up in the post, so make sure to take a peek at that after. Hello, Chi Chi Kiki. How are you doing? Welcome back. How was your weekend? I actually was sick this weekend, so it wasn't that great. Hello, Annika. Yeah, no, I've been sick. I'm trying to kick the rest of it by this weekend for the convention. But we'll see. No worries, Chi Chi Kiki. It is what it is. Yeah, no, there's really been something going on. A lot of it's like congestion, sinus, headache, full ears, which is really weird for me because I don't usually get like allergies in the spring, but it was like really bad allergies. So hopefully it'll be done before the con, but we'll see. No, how was everyone's Mother's Day? I only threw up yesterday morning, so I'm hoping it will get. No, and you're right about to go on your trip. That's no good. Okay, I pretty much completely skipped our intro, so I'm Rosebud Reads and welcome to my book garden. As I said before, this is Peerless Book 4, Part 5, which is very close to the end. We will finish it this week. This is a chill stream, if you didn't pick up on that at the beginning, which means I will be chatting with myself. I'll be chatting with my lovely book garden. I'll be chatting probably at the book. But if that's your flavor, cool, stick around. If it's not, maybe stick around and see. You might enjoy it. You never know. But in any case, I am not sponsored. I do this because I can, as well as just to get these books out there. I believe everyone should have access if they're the correct age, which goes to the next point. This is a mature stream. There may be some triggering elements to it. Since we are live and since I have not read this before, I don't know exactly when those might occur. If you are watching this after, there will be a trigger warning in the title, a description, like brief summary in the description, and it will be timestamped where that occurs, just in case. Hello, Truffle. How are you doing today? But if you are watching this live, I don't have any warnings unless Esper Lady shows up. She has read it before, but she's not here right now. So come travel together. Sometimes I can pick up on context clues and we get a little bit of an awareness, but otherwise be kind to yourself and listen at your own risk. That being said, I am not sponsored. I don't make anything out of this. I just do it because I can and because I enjoy it. This is a lot of fun for me. But in any case, let's go ahead and just get started. Oh, last thing. Pronunciation. This is not my first language. I will probably say things incorrectly. I might stumble over words. if I am horribly mangling a word, feel free to let me know how to say it in the chat. I might occasionally look something up. Because I feel like we should all understand to the best of our knowledge what we're listening to. But yes, it'll happen. Just be nice about it, please. People usually are, but yeah, I'm trying my best. But anyway, kind of good to just jump into it. Oh, I say that and then I immediately contradict myself. So this week will be a little different scheduling wise. We are actually going to stream part 6, the ending of book 4, tomorrow, not Thursday. I have a convention this weekend, which I'm very excited about, and who knows, I might be dressed as a character tomorrow. You never know. But yes, they are very cute, Truffle. Ooh, you have a new hoard of books. That's awesome. Ooh, it's always fun. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead. Oh, a couple of people came in after I said this. The new book poll is up in the posts. So I listed a couple options. So go ahead and take a look at that. Vote. I did place a suggestion box. So if enough people want a different suggestion, I might start a second poll. But yes. Okay. Okay. So, last time, I guess I should put the timestamp. 7 minutes and 15 seconds. Let's go ahead and get started. Ooh! Happy belated birthday, Truffle! Birthday loot is always the best. I agree. Let's see. Okay, so they are looking into... Let's see. Last week. There's a lot going on this weekend. Okay, so we've had the conspiracy about random people dead beneath the willow, the flooding, the grain situation. The grain was on fire. They're in a bunch of trouble right now. Of course. You're welcome, Truffle. So, Yang Yun set up a donation policy for tax exemption, but even if the grain was donated, it wasn't needed by the locals. So where did the surplus grain go? After the flood this year, the imperial court dispersed grain to Guangqian, but Huang Lue said it wasn't enough. If the court's contributions are insufficient, why not use the grain they had hoarded for the past 2 years? In other words, Rongqing murmured, Yang Yun has been deceiving the court for 2 years, and all the surplus grain went into his own pocket. Perhaps, Chubuchu said. Or perhaps not. Whatever the truth of the matter is, Huang Lue must have had insider knowledge of this scheme, or even been one of the participants. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to kill him. Oh yeah, he's dead. He's dead, and our boy has been framed as the person that killed him. That's right, and the Li and the Ding families must have benefited from the tax exemption policy, so they were in on it too. Rongqing sprang up, agitated. Then we should target Li Yan and Wu Yi, find an opening there. And then there's Qixia Villa. If they're storing that much rice there, it'll take some time to move it all. We can take people there now and surround the place. It's not too late. Is it an injustice to readers that the Chuchin scene wasn't illustrated? I could be argued into it being an injustice to readers. Thank you for reminding me of the injustice count. I will read that off once we before we start our chapter. So, my lord, there's a fire north of the city. Everyone's talking about it. They said halfway up the mountain. If I had to guess, it must be around Shishia Villa. The fire is huge. You can see the smoke from inside the city. It's still raining everywhere, yet this place caught fire. Misfortune truly never comes alone. Forgetting everything else, Rongqing ran outside the relay station. He didn't need anyone to guide him. He could see the black smoke rising in the north. A single glance told him the size of the conflagration. Even if the villa's residents were working to put out the fire, it'd be impossible to extinguish quickly. But they wouldn't be trying to put it out. They'd rather let the fire rage until it consumed everything in the villa. All that rice. When Rongqing thought how many refugees the rice could have saved, his heart ached. There would be nothing left in Shishia Villa, an important lead snuffed out. 2 days were left. Oh, yes, they're on a time limit to solve the whodunit, who murdered Huang Lue. Yang Yun had ruled uncontested here for many years. What could they do in a mere 2 days? We're going to see. Rongqing had never been at such a loss. That evening, the group met once more, and everyone split up to work on their own tasks. Guang Shanhai and Qiao Xian stayed in the relay station to recover from their injuries. Feng Xiao discarded his disguise as Li Shishi and left to look for Huang Lue's relatives, though this was likely to be of little help. There was no guarantee Huang Lue had left any other clues before his death. Chubuchu departed to investigate Li Yan and Wu Yi, two key figures in the matter of the grain embezzlement. They too had relatives and connections within the county. For instance, Chubuchu had learned that Li Yan was keeping a mistress outside his household without telling his tigress of a wife. Perhaps this was a new lead that they could follow. As for Rongqing, he was writing a memorial to the emperor. Although the facts of the case were far from clear, he didn't know where he'd be in 2 days. To prevent Yang Yun from burying everything, a memorial delineating their findings and asking for the emperor's intervention was vital. Rongqing sat in the courtyard in a daze. One thought loomed large in his mind. However powerful the enemy might be, they couldn't hide all the grain. Shishia Villa had burned, but traces must remain elsewhere. And then there was the matter of the refugees. Guangqian County was the seat of government in Guangqian Commandery. The victims who'd camped outside the city were desperate and must have come to plead for help. Yang Yun and his faction couldn't have silenced everyone. There had to be survivors. But where were they? If they could find even one or two, they'd have living witnesses. Xiao Liu came over carrying a pot of stew. Your lordship has hardly eaten or slept the past few days. I can see you've grown thinner. I borrowed the kitchen here and cooked some pigeon soup for you. Drink it while it's hot, he said. The aroma of warm soup pulled Rongqing out of his abstraction. His spirits lifted a little, and he said with a smile, Well, I haven't tasted your cooking since we left the capital. How could I refuse? He lifted the lid and inhaled deeply. What's that smell? It was Chubuchu, who walked in through the open gates. Rongqing was too embarrassed to drink the whole bowl in front of him, so he held out the pot. Pigeon soup. Would you like a sip, Chu Xiansheng? Chubuchu glanced at it and said unceremoniously, All right. He took the pot with both hands and lowered his head to drink. Cold steel flashed behind him. A dagger glinted in Xiao Liu's hand as he soundlessly swung it down on Chubuchu's back. So that's where we were. And now, here are our injustices. We have our injustice to service workers sitting at a solid 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 36, 37. Dun dun dun. Our justice to service workers is a measly 3. Injustice to animals and plants is a sad but thankfully low 5. Injustice to innocence is 5, 10, 15, 20, 29, with a half justice to innocence. And it's not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think. Our injustice to Beijing Z is 5, 10, 13. Our injustice to readers is at a fresh new 3. And our shamelessness counter is sitting at a whopping 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 83, which is rather impressive, but I think we can do better. All right. One quick sip and then we start. Chapter 141. Xiao Liu had seen Feng Xiao leave the relay station with his own eyes and knew he wouldn't be back anytime soon. Even if Feng Xiao did sense something and rush back, distant waters couldn't extinguish a nearby fire. He would never make it in time to save Chubu Chu. It's not a matter of if, but when we make it to triple digits. That count only goes up. It's true. As for Rongqing, his view was completely obstructed by Chubu Chu, whose neck was bent as he prepared to drink the soup. He had no idea what was going on. Xiao Liu knew Chubu Chu was fairly lucky, but beyond dumb luck, it was his sharp intellect that kept him alive. Time and again, crises had transformed into opportunities, mostly thanks to Chubu Chu's knack for foreseeing danger and deftly manipulating his environment. But now his guards were incapacitated and far away, leaving only the useless Rongqing at his side. Whom then could he rely on for help? The edge of the poisoned dagger gleamed. Xiao Liu's hand was steady, decisive, and lightning fast. Just as the knife was about to plunge into Chubu Chu's back, the smirk on Xiao Liu's lips froze. A hand was clasped firmly around his wrist. A strong gust of wind surged around him, and Xiao Liu was forced to abandon the prize within his grasp to turn toward the new threat. How had this man appeared so suddenly? He must have been lying in wait, observing Xiao Liu's every move in secret. Rongqing was stunned. Moments ago, he'd covered his mouth to stifle a yawn, yet now chaos had erupted all around him. Even if Xiao Liu didn't want Chu Xiansheng to drink this soup, there was no need to resort to violence. Wait, when has his attendant acquired such formidable skills? And who is the man fighting them? Oh, dude, you are gonna be in big trouble, right? Xiao Liu found his strikes blocked from all directions. Despite the vastness of the courtyard, he was soon forced into a corner. The attacks from his assailant were relentless, though the man's martial arts were nothing special. Xiao Liu was an accomplished assassin, but knew little martial arts. His attacker's abilities were more than enough to pin him down. Having lost the element of surprise, killing his target would be nearly impossible. But failing this mission would mean his death. Turning back was not an option. I love don't mess with my boyfriend moments. Adrenaline surging, Xiao Liu gritted his teeth and, disregarding the blows raining down on him, switched directions midair to lunge toward Chubu Chu. It was a gamble. He was betting on his speed, hoping to eliminate Chubu Chu before his foe could intervene. Xiao Liu pushed his qinggong to the limit, but he couldn't close the distance between himself and Chubu Chu. In desperation, he hurled the dagger. It shot through the air, aimed squarely at Chubu Chu's shoulder. By the time Chubu Chu sought to evade, it was too late. Yet, just as the dagger threatened to strike into his flesh, a rush of air knocked it aside, sending it clattering harmlessly to the ground with a crisp, bright sound. Hot soup splashed over the stone as the pot fell alongside the dagger and shattered into countless fragments. Xiao Liu caught Rong Qing's bewildered gaze and nearly coughed up blood in frustration. But the tables had turned. Before he could make his next move, his opponent was upon him. Pain erupted in his back as a powerful kick sent him crashing to the ground, blood spilling from his mouth. His vision went dark. In the next moment, his arms were twisted painfully behind him, rendering him immobile. "Dislocate his jaw," Chubuchu cried. He had immediately seen through Liu's intentions. Blindsided, Xiao Liu found himself unable to bite down on the poison hidden in his mouth, drool pooling in a humiliating puddle as he struggled. If not for the hatred burning in his eyes, he would have looked ridiculous. "This isn't Xiao Liu," Rong Qing exclaimed in disbelief. "Where's the real Xiao Liu? What did you do with him?" He shook the assassin with all his might, but the man merely sneered. Pei Jingzi, for it was indeed he, breathed a long sigh of relief and finally stood up straight. "Oh boy! Here comes the slander!" The stinging pain in his wrist made him grimace, and he was almost unable to maintain his dignified image as a member of the Jijian Bureau. In fact, Pei Jingzi had arrived in Guangqian County alongside Feng Xiao. His skills had thus far gone unused, since where martial arts were needed, Feng Xiao could do a better job. After Feng Xiao's identity was exposed, Pei Jingzi had become a hidden pawn, patiently waiting for his moment to shine. Earlier that day, Feng Xiao had departed, and Chubuchu had instructed Pei Jingzi to furtively follow him around instead. Pei Jingzi had concealed himself in various out-of-the-way spots. Closets, rafters, trees, anywhere that he could remain unnoticed. To the point, his back was about to snap from crouching in so many tight spaces. Well, at least he got a moment of being the hero, right, Truffle? Fortunately, Chubuchu hadn't been aiming to torture him. Xiao Liu soon exposed himself, allowing Pei Jingzi to spring into action and be freed from swallowing more mosquitoes. Ick. Even if he had to weaponize soup to do it. I honestly thought Chubuchu was going to be the one to throw the soup pot or use the soup pot to block it. Not going to lie. In the meantime, Rong Qing had shaken Xiao Liu with such force that the man vomited a second mouthful of blood. Yet the assassin still refused to, or more likely, perhaps could not, reveal where the real Xiao Liu had gone. "He likely replaced the real Xiao Liu when you entered the array in the forest," Chubuchu explained. "He was with me for a full 6 years and followed me from my hometown to the capital." Rong Qing slowly released the assassin, turning away with reddened eyes. "He was honest, tactful, and a good cook." Alright, so that's an injustice to innocents and an injustice to service workers. That's sad. So that's 25, or 5, 10, 15, 20. Yeah, 25 for injustice to innocents and 38 for injustice to service workers. Pei Jingzi felt a pang of sympathy. He patted Rong Qing's shoulder. "We'll avenge him." Now Rong Qing understood. Chubuchu had sent everyone away to make it more convenient for Xiao Liu to attack. Suspicions were only suspicions, after all, and not enough to justify arresting and interrogating Xiao Liu. "Chu Xiansheng, once this matter is resolved, I want to search for Xiao Liu," he said. "I need to find him, whether alive or dead. Even if I should still take him home for a proper burial." Alright, so I'm going to say that's a very sad justice to service workers. So it's a 4. That's fine. Chubachu wasn't so cold that he'd refuse such a request, as long as it didn't jeopardize the mission. Pei Jingzi stepped forward. Using a wet cloth, he gently rubbed the disguise from the assassin's face. A translucent layer peeled away along with most of Xiao Liu's honest face, revealing the gaunt visage of a stranger. Do you want to torture him? Pei Jingzi asked. An idea struck him. Perhaps I should ask Qiao Niangzi to disguise me as Xiao Liu. They won't know he hasn't yet made a move, and we can wait for them to contact me. It could lead us to another clue. Chubuchu shook his head. It won't work. First, he's an expandable agent. He knows nothing beyond the target of his mission. Second, this type of disposable soldier is meant to be used but once. If he fails to act, our foe will realize something is off. They won't contact you. Then what should we do? Rongqing piped up, asking Pei Jingzi's question. They were like turtles trapped in an urn, unable to glimpse the outside world and relying on instinct to blindly flounder their way forward. Even if they managed to fumble their way through this challenge, another would be awaiting. They couldn't guarantee they'd come out safe again. Even worse, they were running out of time. Yang Yun had issued an ultimatum, and in 2 days he planned to act on it. But in actuality, he'd already made his move. Huang Lui's death, the burning of Qixia Villa, the unknown fates of the missing refugees. Their leads were dead and their information piecemeal, while the enemy's defenses felt impenetrable. Their defeat seemed a foregone conclusion. Rongqing couldn't think of any way for them to turn the tide. He looked at Chubuchu hopefully. When will your Shuoyui guard arrive, Chu Xiansheng? Chubuchu cast him a sidelong glance. His response was shocking. I only said that to intimidate Yang Yun. I never called for them. Rongqing froze stiff with alarm. He couldn't be blamed for his reaction. He hadn't been a censor for long, and Guangqian was his first official assignment outside the capital. It was meant to be a straightforward trip escorting aid, yet instead he found himself up against the deadliest enemy. And such titans as the Shuoyui Bureau's Chief Chu and Deputy Chief Fang were ensnared here, to say nothing of the insignificant Rongqing. If they didn't get to the bottom of this case, grim fates awaited them all. Of course, Rongqing hadn't known about the treachery lurking under the surface in Guangqian County, nor about the 13 floors pulling the strings. He'd only thought Yang Yun so prideful that he found even an imperial envoy beneath his notice. After all, how could one man create such chaos and wield such power? Only later, as the complexities of the case unraveled before his eyes, did he begin to understand how very out of his depth he really was. Pei Jingzi was momentarily taken aback. If your lordship didn't summon the Shuoyui guard, we're here alone. Qiao Niangzi is still injured. If Yang Yun truly intends to slaughter us all, I won't be able to protect your lordship, even if I offer up my life. Chubuchu calmly raised a finger. Pei Jingzi stared at it with wide eyes, trying with all his might to decipher what Chubuchu meant by this gesture. But Chubuchu simply wagged it at him. You're thinking about it all wrong. Pei Jingzi was silent. Perhaps he had grown too accustomed to Chubuchu's icy expression when he traded barbs with Feng Xiao. For a moment, he struggled to believe Chief Chu could also be so childish. But next words from Chubuchu's mouth were exceedingly grave. The Shuoyui Bureau has no manpower to send. Pei Jingzi gaped at him. How can that be? The Shuoyui Bureau was an elusive organization, but while Pei Jingzi knew they didn't have as many personnel as the Jijian Bureau, They still maintained secret sentries stationed in various locations throughout the Northern Dynasty, and even a few in the Southern Dynasty. The capital alone must house several hundred members of the Shuyui Guard. A few hundred ordinary people were nothing more than a mob, but Shuyui guards underwent vigorous training. A few hundred of them represented the best of the best. If Chubuchu managed to summon those guards here, then no matter what Yang Yun wished to do, surely this would give him pause. Chubuchu noticed Rong Qing's confused expression and explained. Before the flood recedes, news will continue to travel slowly. Even if I summoned my people, they would have to take a detour north of the city, just as we did when we arrived. Even if they rush here as quickly as possible, it will take them several days to reach us. By then, the time Yang Yun gave us will be up, and it will be too late. One convinced Wuchu. Why are you now acting like you're blindfolded and bound? But Chubachu continued, disrupting his uncharitable thoughts. In the few sentences you said just now, you mentioned Qiao Xian twice. Chubachu looked at him, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Do you miss her that much? No, Pei Jingzi stuttered out a protest. Suddenly he didn't know what to do with his hands. She misses you too. Pei Jingzi's eyes lit up. I lied. He stared at as Chubuchu continued. She's recovering and should be able to walk now. If you wish, perhaps you should go visit and help her resolve some of her concerns. So I'm going to say that's a slight injustice to Pei Jingzi because he's playing with his feelings. Pei Jingzi's cheeks were aflame, his eyes darting to the side. He'd been about to change the subject, but now he couldn't help wanting to know more. Since they had first met in Liugong City, that celestial maiden in white had left a lasting impression on him. Unfortunately, despite his interest, Qiao Xian remained aloof. She was as cold as she was beautiful, and little Pei Long Jun was too thin-skinned to pester her. Since returning to the capital, whenever the Jijian and Shuyui bureaus had needed to communicate, Pei Jingzi had eagerly volunteered himself in hopes of exchanging a few more words with Qiao Xian. There's a big old error message at the top. I'm gonna reset and be right back. Okay. I'm sorry. I had to run and reset the modem, but I think it fixed it. Oh my goodness. And right when we were getting into a juicy part, are we back? Okay. I'm gonna restart that page. Are we back? Okay. Okay. I've never seen that error message before. It was very strange. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'll go back to Pei Jingzi's cheeks were aflame, but his eyes darted to the side. He'd been about to change the subject, but now he couldn't help wanting to know more. Since they'd first met in Liugong City, that celestial maiden in white had left a lasting impression on him. Unfortunately, despite his interest, Qiao Xian had remained aloof. She was as cold as she was beautiful, and little Pei Lang Jun was too thin-skinned to pester her. Since returning to the capital, whenever the Jijian and Shuyui bureaus had needed to communicate, Pei Jingzi had eagerly volunteered. Volunteered himself in hopes of exchanging a few more words with Qiao Xian. If no one gave him a push, he would continue spinning in circles for the rest of his life. Pei Jingzi felt a surge of emotion. Go on, Chubuchu urged again. With his face flushed red, Pei Jingzi looked like a young boy, brimming with affection but unsure how to express it. He excused himself and walked stiffly inside. Curious, Rong Qing asked, what concerns does Qiao Niangzi have? Since she and Guan Shanhai had returned, Rong Qing had barely seen them. He felt that there was something strange about Chubuchu bringing Pei Jingzi and Xiao Xian together now, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Giving Shen Yi crushing on Chen Qing Shu. Yeah, a little bit. Chubuchu smiled faintly. What? Does Sensor Rong also yearn for Xiao Xian? Not at all, not at all. Rong Qing frantically waved his hands. It had only been a casual question. He pointed to the assassin, still on the ground. What should we do with him? He was answered with a bright laugh as Feng Xiao strode in. Cold, steamed, braised, you can prepare him any way you like. The chilly courtyard seemed to grow several degrees warmer. That's cute. Chubuchu blinked. He had to admit this fellow's beauty was truly exceptional, lovely enough to captivate all of creation. Simply standing there, he allowed him to speak. Indeed, Lowry, so 84? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, 84. Chu Xiansheng, Feng Xiao said. I couldn't help but notice your gaze lingered on me a bit longer than usual just now. Sure enough, couldn't help but notice your gaze lingered on me a bit longer than usual just now. Sure enough, that irritating voice spoiled the moment. Feng Xiao stopped at the threshold of the courtyard, expertly choosing his angle. Sweet-scented osmanthus flowers drifted onto his shoulders. The tilt of his fan and the motion of his wrist as he waved it, miraculously calculated, effortlessly elegant, yet carefully restrained to prevent the delicate flowers from falling to the ground. Would you like me to stand here a bit longer so you can savor the view? 85? That won't be necessary, Chubuchu replied coldly. Next time, he thought, he wouldn't give this man so much as a second glance. Feng Xiao seemed to sense his thoughts, and a slight smirk curved his lips, as if mocking Chubuchu's resolve. Chubuchu looked down, irritated. I presume Deputy Chief Feng has returned with good news. Indeed I have, Feng Xiao said with a smile. I did a charitable deed, and Li Yan's wife was most grateful. It turns out that good intentions really are rewarded. He tossed the bundle he was carrying onto the stone table. Rong Qing was left utterly baffled by this exchange, but Chubuchu merely sighed. He no longer expected this peacock with his tail raised sky high to be capable of proper conversations. Rather than respond, he explained the situation to Rong Qing. Guangxian County had embezzled significant amounts of grain for 3 consecutive years. It was impossible that they'd erased all traces of their deeds. Huang Lue had likely been silenced because he knew too much. Perhaps he'd even had key evidence. Though he was dead, whatever records he'd kept wouldn't simply vanish. They would be transferred to another co-conspirator, such as Li Yan or Wu Yi. People's hearts were often surprisingly predictable. Just as Yang Yun had used Huang Lue's while keeping a wary eye on him, Huang Lue's death had sounded the alarm for Li Yan and the others. They would surely scramble to secure some evidence, either to leverage against Yang Yun or to ensure their own safety. No matter how perfect a plan might be, there would always be vulnerabilities. The more intelligent the planner, the more contingencies they would prepare for. Chubachu wasn't concerned about them overthinking. On the contrary, he feared that they wouldn't think enough. As long as the enemy had a weakness, there was still a chance for them to turn the tide. They'd learned Li Yan was keeping a mistress outside his house. His wife had a fiery temper, so he didn't dare let his family know and had concealed the affair from everyone. If Feng Xiao didn't use this knowledge to incite chaos, he simply wouldn't be able to live with himself. Via the Li family servants, he discreetly passed evidence of Leon's infidelity to his wife, Lady He, including the address of the house he'd purchased for his mistress. Ooh, it's about to go down if it hasn't already. Despite her fury, Lady He had remained surprisingly level-headed. Rather than reacting immediately, she waited until Li Yan went out to visit his mistress there, then burst in and caught him in the act. She'd chased both the mistress and Li Yan through the courtyard with a rolling pin, startling the neighbors and creating a terrific scene. Li Yan, overwhelmed with guilt, had begged Lady He for forgiveness. She dismissed his pleas and ordered the servants to turn the manor upside down. Li Yan grew so furious he almost fainted. When he gathered his courage and attempted to reason with his wife, she struck him on the head with her rolling pin so hard he passed out cold. You get it, girl. Evidence of Lian pampering his mistress was everywhere in the manor, including the many gifts he'd showered upon her. Upon seeing these, Lady He's anger intensified. She ordered the servants to ransack the place, smashing what they could and confiscating whatever gold, silver, and jewelry they found. Right? Meanwhile, Deputy Chief Fang sat in the rafters watching the mayhem unfold. He had a perfect view of the Li family servants turning the house inside out, allowing him to spot anything Li Yan might have concealed there related to the grain. It was obvious Li Yan doted on his mistress and feared his wife more than he respected her. When people had secrets to hide, they often concealed them where they themselves felt most comfortable, believing believing these were the places of greatest safety. Chubuchu and Feng Xiao understood this well, which was why they'd chosen the manor as their first target. But nothing was certain. If they found no clues there, they would have to turn their attentions to Wu Yi. Fortunately, this time, their guess was correct. Feng Xiao untied the knot on the bundle, freeing several scrolls which tumbled off the table. There, under the clear blue sky, the scrolls unfurled, revealing their contents to the half-conscious assassin. The man's eyes went wide in disbelief, and a trickle of blood slid from his nose. Apparently, he was an assassin with a pure and innocent heart. So, I'm just going to preemptively put 86 down. The images on the scrolls were portrayed with exquisite lines and a vibrant array of colors. They depicted myriad scenes, from folding screens and manors to grape trellises in courtyards, from carriages to bustling brothels to taverns that teemed with onlookers. The paintings featured men and women of every sort, all engaged in various intimate acts. Some bashful, some wild, some coy, some fiercely resistant. There seemed to be no limit to the painter's imagination. Rong Qing stood dumbfounded as he pointed at the painting, stammering, This! Chubuchu said nothing. It was the first time he ever felt so ignorant and uninformed in his life. Feng Xiao was laughing, proudly flaunting his spoils. Ha 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 ha! What do you think? Admit it, even you're shocked. Chubuchu's face was expressionless. After crouching in the rafters for half a day, this is the clue you found? Oh boy. Oh boy. Time. 142. 4730. Truffle, are you back? Chi-Chi, you back? Alright. Chapter 142. Feng Xiao looked back at him, the picture of innocence. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. You strayed from the path of enlightenment, Chu Xiansheng. He tapped the paintings with his fan. Okay, I'm glad you're still here. I didn't know with having to reset it. On the surface, they look like erotic paintings, but in fact, they are hiding something much more meaningful. I'm glad you're here. On hearing these words, the assassin fell into deep thought. If these weren't ordinary erotic paintings, what kind of extraordinary paintings were they? Could there be some profound martial arts forms hidden within these poses? If I'd discovered those paintings earlier, could I have escaped the fate of an assassin and embarked on the path of a martial arts master? Oh, you sweet baby assassin. Oh, you poor, pitiful, innocent soul. No. Feng Xiao had no idea his casual words had prompted such soul-searching. But unlike the assassin in Rongqing, who was likewise shocked beyond words, Chu Buchu lived up to his reputation. He hadn't been led astray by Feng Xiao, and after a moment's silence he discovered a hint within those lurid scenes. The faces of the men depicted were all, without exception, the same. Did Li Yan hire someone to paint him and his mistress enjoying themselves? Clever! Feng Xiao struck his palm with his fan. I told you, they're not ordinary erotic paintings. Custom erotic paintings featuring oneself as the subject. It was certainly a niche interest. Li Yan had looked very serious and proper when they met him. Who could have known he was so broad-minded behind closed doors? Did you see where they took these scrolls from? Chu Buchu asked. Feng Xiao smiled. As expected, you're cut to the heart of the matter. The paintings were packed in a box, and the box was hidden beneath a floor tile beneath the bed. The tile had been covered in heavy boxes, all of them filled with gold and silver jewelry. Li Yan's salary would never allow him to accumulate so much wealth, even if he had worked for another 20 years. Chu Buchu pondered this. These paintings are shameful, but they're not valuable. He hid the worthless pictures in the safest place, but left the more valuable gold and silver jewelry in the open. Strange, to say the least. I agree. After his wife knocked him out, I stayed until Li Yan woke up. What do you think was the first thing he did when he woke? Chu Buchu raised his eyes and looked at Feng Xiao. When Chu Buchu focused on a person, his eyes were particularly bright, sharp and cold, yet with a hidden sentimentality to them, like flowing spring waters concealed beneath ice and snow. Feng Xiao had only meant to take a single look, but found himself taking an additional 2 or 3. It wasn't until Chu Buchu raised an inquisitive brow that he coughed lightly and continued. When Li Yan woke up, he didn't look at the gold and silver scattered on the ground, nor did he run to find out how much of his property had been stolen by his wife's servants. He went straight for the box containing the erotic paintings. Lady He thought he was still attached to them and became so furious she chased him out again. Feng Xiao clicked his tongue. You should have seen it. It was quite the commotion. Records. Chu Buchu ignored Feng Xiao's gloating and said succinctly, These paintings are the records we're looking for. They took the records! Li Yan wailed. Wu Yi looked at Li Yan's bruised and swollen face. His nose was leaking snot. Ew. Wu Yi moved a little further away, then tossed over a handkerchief and said with disgust, Wipe it! Li Yan couldn't have cared less. He was in a full-blown panic over losing something so important. I checked everywhere. The servants refused to admit they took them. They're a pile of worthless paintings. Even if they stole them, they couldn't sell them. What in heaven's name did they do with them? Hui sneered. I told you to hide such an important thing in erotic paintings. You kept them locked away even more securely than gold and silver. Doesn't that make it obvious that they're valuable? How could I have known Lady He would bring so many people? Li Yan wept piteously. Any normal thief would never have found them. What do we do now? You're the one who said we should keep the records to blackmail Yang Yun. Well, Yang Yun will be fine and we'll be the ones in hot water. Pull yourself together, Wu Yi said coldly. What does it matter if they find the location in the records? The governor has planned for everything. They went to Chixia Villa and you saw what happened there. So what if the Shuoyue Bureau stands behind Rongqing? Even the most powerful dragon can't defeat a snake in its own garden. As long as the governor doesn't wish for them to find anything, they won't. For a moment, Leon was stunned. His befuddled expression, coupled with his two black eyes, looked exceedingly ridiculous. But his appearance was the least of his worries. Do you know something? He asked hurriedly. What did Yang Yun, no, the governor, say to you? Just before you arrived, I paid him a call. He told me we could rest easy. Perhaps Wu Yi was in a good mood. Despite looking down on the cowardly deputy magistrate Li Yan, he poured him a cup of wine. In a few days, everything will be tied up neatly. Li Yan became only more confused. Neatly? How can it be neat? Even if they don't find the grain stores, doesn't Huang Luo's death indicate some sort of foul play? The governor said he'd ensure they take all the blame, but it can't be that simple. It all hinges on whether His Majesty believes him and whether the court believes him. Phrasing! Everything will be all tied up. Fair point, Truffle, fair point. The governor said he'd ensure they take all the blame, but it isn't quite that simple. It all hinges on whether His Majesty believes him, whether the court believes him. And what if neither the censor nor anyone backing him is alive to testify? Wu Yi asked darkly. Lian trembled. His eyes were so swollen he could hardly open them. Even trying with all his might, he could only widen them a crack. Through those cracks he saw that Wu Yi's smile had become sinister. What are you proposing? What can you do with no guts? At least Huang Luo had the courage to play double agent. This Li bastard sniveled and cried like the sky was falling when his paperwork was stolen. He was more useless than a vengeful woman. Wu Yi cursed him inwardly, yet his expression remained amiable as he pushed the wine across the table to Li Yan. There's something in that wine. It's not what I'm proposing. It's what the governor's proposing. What does that mean? Leon said suspiciously. Rongqing's memorial will never be delivered. As for the Shuoyue Bureau, even if Chubuchu files a complaint, we have people in the capital who will smooth things over. Chubuchu is the trust of the Empress, but the governor is a Yang. If we don't have allies in the capital, could our operation have gone as smoothly as it has? The only new variable this time is Chubuchu. If Rongqing had come alone, this would have long been resolved. That's good, Truffle. Good luck. The only new variable this time is Chubuchu. If Rongqing had come alone, this would have long been resolved. Wu Yi paused before continuing confidently. As for the other members of the Shuoyue Bureau, we needn't worry about them. The governor has made plans to silence them permanently. It'll all be over once you're dead. At that point, right or wrong is determined by others. Lian took in Wu Yi's confident expression and said nothing. Wu Yi hadn't been like this 2 days ago. He'd been just as anxious as Li Yan, just as terrified that their crimes would be exposed and that Yang Yun would make them scapegoats. Yet suddenly he seemed almost a different person. The only possible explanation was that he knew something Li Yan did not. Chubuchu was the Empress's trusted aide, while the Shuyui Bureau served as her teeth and claws. But Wu Yi had insinuated that none of this mattered to Yang Yun at all. Li Yan had thought that since the chief of the Shuyui Bureau had come in person, he must have martial experts at his side. Although Yang Yun held immense power within Guangqian Commandery, he might not have the charisma to attract his own experts and annihilate Chubuchu in a single strike. Unless there was a greater power behind Yang Yun, a larger, more complicated organization, far beyond Li Yan's imagination. Li Yan felt a chill run up his spine. He snatched up the cup of wine and downed it in a gulp, hoping it would calm his nerves. But as the wine slid down his throat, his heart raced faster. Did the governor say when the dust will settle? Wu Yi held out 2 fingers. Within 2 days? Wu Yi smiled mysteriously. Oh my. There's a picture, and it's quite interesting. The paintings have no inner layers. There's nothing hidden in the scroll either. Then the key must be in the images themselves. Had anyone opened the door at this moment, they would have thought they'd entered some low-class brothel by mistake. The tables, floor, and walls were all plastered with erotic paintings. Unfortunately, no beautiful women graced the room, but 2 men. Yep, just don't you worry, you'll get the picture. They sat facing each other, expressions stern as they carefully examined the paintings. Or more precisely, Chubuchu looked stern. Feng Xiao would never stand if he could sit, and never sit if he could lie down. He reclined against a plump cushion, one leg drawn up, as he admired the paintings he'd found in Li Yan's mistress's residence. Honestly, where did he get the idea? If I were Li Yan, I would never think of hiding account records in dirty paintings. Then no tigress would chase you all over the yard any time soon, Chibuchi said, without looking up. Feng Xie laughed. I didn't expect Chu Xiansheng to love them so much she'd be unwilling to put them down. If I'd known you liked this sort of thing, I'd have sent you a heap of them. You could look to your heart's content. If you were in the painting, I wouldn't just like it, Chubuchu retorted. I'd give copies to the entire Shuyui Bureau. Everyone would get one, guaranteed. All right, you ready for this? Oh boy. And of course, he's all sparkly. Oh my. Yup. Wow. At least most of them seem to be just people snuggling. Uh-huh. Snuggling. And the sparkles are back. Those are old school paintings. There was actually an exhibit at a museum near me that was all about Asia and the different regions. They actually had a back section with someone thankfully at the door that was about ancient Chinese sexuality and their art depicting it. And it was a very interesting exhibit. Feng Xiao nodded. And what if the other face were yours? Chubuchu gave him a look that said, Would you like to die standing or lying down? And spoke coldly. I know where the records are hidden. Yeah, no, it was a very cool exhibit. I guess fascinating would be a better statement. I know where the records are hidden. Feng Xiao perked up, no longer invested in their bickering. Where? All right. And that's another shameless. So 87. Right here. Chubuchu pointed at to the painting in front of him. It's signed third year of the Kai Huang era, 21st of the 12th month. That date is in the future. Why would Li Yan sign a date 2 months in advance? If you look at the painting again, you see before Chief Chu could make any vicious remarks, he tucked away his smile and took a serious look at the painting. You think the date represents an amount of grain? At least one of the numbers does. We've been to Chixia Villa, so we can recognize it. This painting is the easiest to interpret. As for the rest... Chubuchu looked around the room. I can identify 3 more places at the moment. Feng Yun Tavern, Xiao's Tea House, and a villa belonging to the Ding family. Identifying the rest would probably require someone familiar with all the pavilions and houses in the streets and alleys of Guangqian County. But we don't have that much time. The third one, the Ding Villa, is on the southern outskirts of the city. The area is flooded, so we can eliminate that one. That leaves only Feng Yun Tavern and Xiao's Tea House. I love that they went from I will kill you to bickering like an old married couple with death threats. It's an interesting dynamic, Truffle. Yes. Okay. How did you recognize those two? Asked Feng Xiao curiously. Chu Buchu pointed to his own forehead with a slender finger. Before I arrived, I looked at a map of Guangqian County and roughly memorized all the landmarks in the city. On my arrival, I walked the streets, but I can only remember these 2 locations. Merely reading a map and seeing the actual place one time had been sufficient for Chu Buchu to match the names with their respective locations and commit them firmly to memory. Remembering even a single place was impressive. Few others, Feng Xiao included, would have recalled even that much. But the Shuoyue Bureau didn't need others. One Chubuchu was enough. Feng Xiao had witnessed this ability of Chubuchu's countless times by now, yet each time he found himself struck by surprise and a little admiration. The things Chubuchu paid most attention to were the details others often ignored. Those details might seem useless to most, but there was always a chance they'd come in handy. And sometimes they'd determine the difference between victory and defeat. Feng Yuan Tavern or Xiao's Tea House. Pick one, Chubuchu said. Feng Xiao scowled. Why me? I've worked for days pretending to be Li Shi. I pretended to be someone's grandson, fought Xiao Lu at Chixia Villa, and now you want me to be your errand boy? Then should I go? I don't really care, Chubuchu said evenly. I'm merely worried that if I don't die from fatigue on the way, I'll be felled by a single strike once I arrive. Feng Xiao sneered. Don't try that with me. Get your Qiao Xian to go. Qiao Xian is injured. She's injured, not missing her arms and legs. She can handle one more fight. If she can't win, she can simply run away. You cherish your beloved subordinates, so, but you won't spare a mote of concern for me? Is that it? Without warning, Feng Xiao leaned in, catching Chubuchu off guard. He was close. Chubuchu could feel the warm puff of his breath. Chubuchu tried to retreat, but Feng Xiao grabbed the back of his head and held him firmly in place. Their eyes met. Slowly, Chubuchu blinked. The jet of his throat bobbed, the motion so small it was almost imperceptible. Before Chubuchu could get angry, Feng Xiao laughed and pulled back first. Chubuchu, you're blushing. It's hot in here, said Chubuchu expressionlessly. 88. Meng Xiao brushed aside his excuse. You really are fascinated by my beauty. You're only pretending you're not. I'm not. Pick one. I'll send Guan Shanhai to the other. You'd rather send Guang Shanhai than Xiao Xian, even though his injuries are more said nothing. Feng Xiao smacked his fan into his palm. Every time you show that blank expression, I know I've got it right. I never thought you'd suspect her. Since when? Before they'd left the capital, Chubuchu had entered the palace to meet Empress Dugu and inform her of his investigations regarding the 13 floors of Yunhai. When Empress Dugu asked him what help he needed, he'd asked for a person. Everyone thought Guan Shanhai had been forced upon him by the Empress, and that his presence proved she didn't trust Chubuchu. No one had guessed that Chubuchu had asked for Guan Shanhai himself. Despite this misunderstanding, neither he nor Guan Shanhai had clarified things to anyone. The misunderstanding was precisely what they needed. Feng Xiao had also originally drawn the same conclusion, but he'd quickly discarded it. From what he knew of Empress Dugu's personality, not to mention her trust in Chubuchu, she didn't need to control her officials and aides via such ham-fisted methods. Guang Shanhai wasn't here to monitor Chubuchu. He was here to monitor Xiao Xian. I did not see that coming. Not gonna lie. I like that about this author. There are sometimes things that I really don't see coming, and I appreciate that in books. So I think that's part of the reason I like Danmei so much is they actually have surprises. It doesn't hurt that they're hot. No, not a protective queen. All right. 1:11:30. Chapter 143. When did you begin to suspect her? Ever since you told me on Mount Tiannan that there was a traitor close to me. Feng Xiao arched a brow. I thought you concluded it was Fan Yun. I did at first, said Chubuchu. Fan Yun is most familiar with my past, which is why the 13 floors of Yunhai set that trap for me in Boling. But I gradually discovered that they not only knew my past, but also my current whereabouts, where I was going, and what I was going to do. The 13 floors of Yunhai always seemed able to predict where I'd be and lay traps before I arrived. They knew your plans before you went to Chixia Villa. Chubuchu nodded. No matter how clever Xiao Lu is, he's not a god. It's impossible for him to know every detail of my movements. The only explanation is a traitor close to me. And that traitor can't be any ordinary Shu Yue guard because the enemy is practically following my every footstep. But that doesn't prove it's Qiao Xian. It doesn't, Chu Buchu agreed. That's why I took her and Guan Shanhai with me on this trip. I came to Guanxian Commandery in secret. Other than my two guards, only Empress Dugu knew. Even Rong Qing and his attendant only learned the news just before setting out. When Rong Qing arrived in Guangqian County, he encountered obstacles at every turn. He was deceived and ambushed by Huang Lue and the others, and even accused of murder. His attendant Xiao Liu also died, which shows Rong Qing can't be from Xiao Lu's faction. Guang Shanhai was handpicked by me. His family has been with the army for 3 generations. He has little connection to the capital and a clean background. No matter how superhuman Xiao Lu is, his reach can't possibly extend to Guang Shanhai. That leaves only Qiao Xian. It must be her. She's been secretly sending messages to our enemies, passing my whereabouts to them and facilitating their attacks. Feng Xiao chuckled. She doesn't know that you have a card up your sleeve. She's had countless opportunities to attack you, but she's never took them. She's still sentimental about your relationship. I was already on guard against her, so I never gave her the chance, Chubuchu said placidly. If she wants to kill me, she won't succeed. I never entrust my back to those I suspect. Feng Xiao clapped his hands. Now there's the ever-decisive Chubuchu. But I wonder, he leaned forward on his elbows and stared at Chubuchu. Would you entrust your back to me? Their gazes collided. Chubuchu couldn't avoid it. They were so close he could see his reflection in Feng Xiao's eyes, almost filling them. There was a moment of silence. Chu Xiansheng, did your lordship find... Rong Qing rushed in, but his voice died as he noticed the strange atmosphere in the room. They both turned their heads, and Rong Qing forced a stiff smile. The two gentlemen can please continue chatting. I'll come back later. 89. Without waiting for them to reply, he whirled around and left, fleeing like someone had set fire to his tail. Oh, were they about to have a moment? They were about to have something. I don't know if it's quite a moment. I think they're also surrounded by the filthy paintings still, the erotica. So that scene and then surrounded by porn, like ancient porn, is kind of hilarious to visualize. And yes, poor Rong Qing. I guess that's injustice to innocence. That's an injustice to his innocence. So 26. Yeah. Feng Xiao reached out and grabbed Chubuchu's chin, slowly turning his gaze from Rong Qing back to himself. Chubuchu unceremoniously slapped the back of his hand hard and missed. Feng Xiao had pulled his hand back faster. The updated reports are going to be wild. Chubuchu sneered. Slowly he said, I will never entrust my back to an arrogant, conceited narcissist. Face grab's pretty shameless, so that's a 90. We have reached 90! Feng Xiao laughed aloud. Chubuchu, you can list so many of my virtues. Doesn't that prove you care for me and that I value you? Feng Er, have you ever heard this saying? I'm all ears. The first to ask loses. Feng Xiao nodded. You're saying you originally wanted to ask me the same thing. I knew it. Even though you're a mean-spirited person who acts aloof and detached and never takes my feelings seriously, you still have to bend in the face of a singularly elegant young master like myself. Chubuchu gave him an incredulous look. How can a person as shameless as you exist? Well, since you literally called him shameless, I gotta add another one. 91. Feng Xiao sighed. Ah, you are jealous of my grace, envious of my unfettered freedom. The jealous and envious Chubuchu looked like he'd been force-fed a rotten egg and made to swallow the foul thing lodged in his throat. The corners of his mouth twitched as he said, sincere. Feng Air, sometimes there's something I really want to do to you. Fill me up, said Feng Xiao. Molest me, degrade me, turn you mute with poison. Your face by itself is appetizing enough. So that's 92. Feng Xiao laughed. That won't work. If I'm mute, who can match you in a battle of wits? Xiao Lu could, said Chubuchu. A scoundrel who skulks in the dark, refusing to show himself. Feng Xiao pressed his lips together. Can a firefly's glow outshine the moon? If you knew Qiao Xian was working for him, why didn't you do something about it? Are you letting out the line to catch the big fish? Chubuchu was silent a moment. 4 years ago, when we met, she was wretched and miserable. She might have been pretending, said Feng Xiao. She had many opportunities to attack me when we were alone together along the way, but she never did. To make it more believable, Feng Xiao said. If you can't bear to do it, allow me. No need. I'll give her a chance and let her choose, Chubuchu said. Feng Xiao sighed. Ah, Chubuchu, a cold man with a warm heart. Chubuchu sneered. Feng Yun Tian, a flower in love with its own petals. I'd prefer you to describe me as a dashing man of grace. Feng Xiao snapped open his fan and rose. I like drinking wine, not tea, so I choose Feng Yun Tavern. But what's your next move? They'll likely have made preparations at these two places. We have no idea if there's truly a new lead or another trap. Chubuchu, the master strategist, surely you're not sending Guan Shanhai and me into the enemy camp by ourselves, are you? Chubuchu shrugged. I have no cards left. Xiao Lu has me at the end of my tether. What else would Why else would I ask to borrow Pei Jingzi? Ouch. I feel like that's another injustice to Pei Jingzi. That's really harsh. 15. Poor Pei Jingzi. He's just getting the proverbial crap kicked out of him. I even hope to ask you to mobilize some Jijian Bureau Eagle Riders to help us get through this. I'm sorry, but there's no manpower left at the Jijian Bureau either. Otherwise, why would I, the deputy chief himself, make a potential appearance? You know why. Feng Xiao shot him a penetrating look, as if he wished to pry into Chubuchu's innermost thoughts. It's not like you, Chubuchu, to leave yourself no recourse. Chubuchu sighed. Yang Yun is getting restless. Qiao Lu is worried about dragging things out. They're sure to make a move within the next 2 days, and it's too late to call the Shu Yui guard from elsewhere. Even the wisest man, considering 1,000 possibilities, can still make a mistake. Against this powerful enemy, I might even pay with my poor, insignificant life. Feng Xiao also sighed, his gaze sympathetic. Chu Leng Jun's situation is truly tragic this time. No less tragic than yours, Chubuchu said sorrowfully. The two sly foxes looked at each other, one sitting, one standing, both wearing the same pained smile. You know it's really a bad situation when two people that are that smart are just like, yeah, we really are kind of fucked. Like, this situation is not great. Another room, another two people. One wore a blank expression, almost identical to Chu Chu's, as she stared at the newcomer. The other shrank further into himself the more she stared, at a loss for what to do. You seem unhappy, Pei Jingzi said carefully. Qiao Xian finally spoke. When did you get here? Pei Jingzi breathed a quiet sigh of relief. I came with my lord. He asked me to assist Chu Xiansheng. Someone tried to assassinate him just now, but I stopped him. Who sent them? She asked, her aloof expression faltering. Is the Lord Chief all right? He's fine. But since the enemy didn't succeed, they're certain to try again, he answered honestly. I'm afraid I can only do so much with my martial arts. Next time, he might not be so lucky. Without thinking, Xiao Xian rose from the bed and put on her boots. Pei Jingzi hurried to stop her. Now that my lord is here, all you need to do is rest and recover. Of course. With Feng Xiao here, why should I worry? Xiao Xian said with a self-deprecating laugh. Huh. There was obviously another implication beneath her words. Pei Jingzi couldn't help but observe. You seem extremely prejudiced against the deputy chief. Xiao Xian pursed her lips and said nothing, as if this action alone was sufficient to express her endless disgust. Blinking, Pei Jingzi cast about for something else to say. After my last trip with him, he almost docked my pay. Sure enough, Xiao Xian frowned. Is the Jijian Bureau so poor they need to cut their subordinates' pay? Pei Jingzi smiled. It wasn't a pay cut. It was because I performed poorly, and my lord punished me for it. Feng Xiao is so stingy, Xiao Xian muttered. Pei Jingzi smiled again. He often threatens such things, but he almost never follows through. I consider him a father as much as a master. Without him, there's much I would never have learned. Maybe I'd still be a foolish, confused boy who knows nothing about the world. What about you? Why did you join the Shuyue Bureau and start working under Chu Xiansheng? He's never given his trust easily, so those who earn it must be outstanding. Feng Xiao is bullying her brother. Of course she doesn't like him. He didn't know which of his words had struck Xiao Xian, but she immediately froze. Oof. That's got to be like an icy dagger right to the feels. Someone saying like, hey, he trusts you so much. Like, you must be amazing. So all we can do is sit back and wait for them to make a move. Feng Xiao had departed for the tavern, while Pei Jingzi had disappeared to speak with Xiao Xian. Rong Qing and Zhu Buchu sat under a tree playing chess. The former was restless and absent-minded. After a few matches, he couldn't resist asking this question. The relay station was very quiet. It was the middle of the day, yet the building felt empty of people. No. Chu Buchu shook his head. Rong Qing's hopes rose. There the wolf, and were the rabbit. As Rong Qing stared, Chu Buchu amended. Ah, that's not right either. Together, you and I make 2 rabbits. Rong Qing smiled bitterly. I've already written the memorial and sent someone to deliver it with all haste. Have you prepared a copy? No. Why? Rong Qing asked in confusion. What's wrong? Your memorial will never arrive, Chu Buchu said sympathetically. If we're lucky enough to survive the next few days, you'll have to write another one. It would have been easier if you had made a copy. Rong Qing was speechless. He stared at Chu Buchu for a long time, then couldn't help saying, Why are you so sure my memorial won't arrive? I even specially gave the courier an extra letter. Once he arrives in the capital, he can go to my residence and collect a bonus. He'll rush there as. He never finished the sentence. Rong Ching heard a swift rush of air and watched in horror as an arrow whistled over the wall and nailed itself into a nearby pillar. The entire front third of the arrow was buried in the wood, a thick letter attached to the shaft. Rong Ching recognized the memorial he'd sealed and handed to the courier himself. The fletching of the arrow was dull, and the letter was stained with blood. A lock of hair was attached to it. Rong Ching whipped his head back around to look at Chubuchu. This is just the beginning, Chubuchu offered. Rong Ching didn't know what to say. Hi, Mars Rover. So we are just breaking down some and investigating some of the steps. They still have 2 days to investigate. They now have 2 different places they can find. There was a little bit of tomfoolery. Now Chubuchu and Rong Ching, the official censor are sitting just basically out in the open, and Rong Ching is like, I sent the letter to the emperor. It'll get there. Like I promised to pay extra to the courier. He's gonna run and be there. And now it just flew over the wall, attached by an arrow, and it's covered in blood, and a lock of hair was attached to it. So most likely the courier is dead. That's probably the courier's hair. And they're kind of mocking him now, but Feng Xiao is over investigating a tavern, and Shen Hai is investigating the other area. But we also found out that Chubuchu actually kind of suspects Qiao Xian of being kind of an agent for the 13 floors of Yunhai, or like a double agent. And so it's kind of keeping her at arm's length because he explained, I only told like 2 people. Not even the censor knew that I was coming here, and yet we've met obstacle after obstacle even before we arrived. So that was the one true surprising aspect, is that Chubuchu suspects Qiao Xian. So yeah. 1:30:45. Chapter 144. Qiao Xian still remembered the rainy night when she'd first met Chubuchu. She had just been expelled from her sect and had nowhere to go. As she trudged down the road, she saw a lantern shining bright and warm through the dark night. The lantern belonged to a relay station on the outskirts of the city, meant for travelers who arrived after nightfall and had to wait for the gates to open in the morning. Beneath the lantern sat a small stall selling hot soup. Business was slow tonight. Beside the stall owner, there was only one other person. The man looked sickly, his movements slow. He sat quietly, looking at the hot soup on the table, lost in thought. When he raised his head, he happened to meet her probing eyes. Through the thick curtain of rain, Qiao Xian heard the man say, "Would you like a bowl of hot soup?" "All right," she replied. Many in the Shu Yue Bureau laughed at her overdependence on Chubuchu. Some even speculated that she was secretly in love with Chief Chu. Qiao Xian had scoffed at the rumors. She didn't need to explain herself. Chubuchu had helped her when she was at her most desperate, taking her in, taught her, and made her Qiao Xian of the Shu Yue Bureau instead of Qiao Xian the traitor, at whom everyone spat and cursed. If Feng Xiao was the person Pei Jingzi most revered, then Chu Chu was the same for Qiao Xian. In gratitude for his guidance and tutelage, Qiao Xian was willing to brave fire and flood. But there were some forces even she was helpless to refuse. 4 years ago, she hadn't anticipated how terrifying that helplessness would become. Things had spiraled out of her control like a horse throwing off its reins. Once it broke free, it could never be easily restrained again. She had thought she was on a mountain road, and that despite the intermittent crags and bumps, it would take her steadily upward. Only now did she realize she'd been wrong. The road had led her to a cliff, and she was standing at the precipice. The road back was cut off. She could neither advance nor retreat, and didn't know what to do. The abyss was waiting for her below, with its bloody maw stretched wide, ready to engulf her at any moment. Xiao Niangzi. What did you say? Qiao Xian murmured, returning to her senses. I said that if something's on your mind, you don't have to tell me, but why not talk to Chu Xiancheng? He has lots of ideas. I'm sure he'll help you find a solution. Perhaps because he had an arrogant and insolent boss like Feng Xiao, Pei Jingzi was especially gentle and patient. Qiao Xian lowered her lashes. What if even the Lord Chief can help me? Pei Jingzi blinked. He began to understand why Chu Chu had sent him here. It's not too late to make amends. Rong Qing hadn't anticipated that Chu Chu's prediction would come true so quickly. The relay station seemed to have an invisible boundary drawn around it. The enemy outside hadn't stormed in just yet, but they would do everything possible to kill them from without. The same afternoon, the blood-stained memorial was returned undelivered. 4 assassins snuck into the relay station's courtyard. They were men of some skill. Had Rong Qing been alone, he would have died several times over. Luckily, Pei Jingzi had 2 eagle riders to capture 3 of their attackers, and though the 4th man escaped, it was with serious injuries. He probably wouldn't survive for long. In the evening, someone set a fire in the backyard. While everyone was fighting the fire, their assailant took advantage of the chaos to poison the food in the kitchen. Chu Chu caught him in the act and had him seized. The 2 consecutive attacks sent everyone into a panic. Chu Chu, dismissed in rank and authority, remained unruffled. His calm was infectious, and Rong Qing gradually regained his composure. Day passed into night. Feng Xiao had yet to return, and there was no sign of Guan Chanhai. Pei Jingzi gradually began to feel the pressure, like a noose tightening around them. A greater storm was brewing. As the last dusky clouds on the horizon were engulfed by darkness, the world welcomed a moonless night, lit only by the flickering of lamps. When Pei Jingzi entered the main hall, he found Chu Chu sitting by the fire, warming himself and reading a book. Surprisingly, he seemed truly absorbed. He wasn't holding the book just for show. Pei Jingzi watched him turn a page, his lips curving slightly in amusement. Is Chu Xiancheng reading something funny? Pei Jingzi approached the brazier, but found himself sweating almost immediately. He took a few steps back and chose a seat farther away. Although it was autumn, the weather was still mild. Most people didn't need a brazier in these temperatures. But Chu Chu feared both the heat and the cold, and he felt more comfortable next to the fire. It's a short classic about 2 brothers fighting over a wife, he answered. Pei Jingzi couldn't believe Chu Chu was in the mood to read at a time like this. Sir, he blurted, my lord has been gone most of the day. When do you think he will be back? Is he in danger? Chu Chu shook his head. Pei Jingzi was about to breathe a sigh of relief when Chu Chu followed up with, Of course he's in danger. Then why did you shake your head? Pei Jingxi's mouth twitched. He's in danger. Then why did you shake your head? Pei Jingxi's mouth twitched. I shook my head because I don't know when he will return. You can comfort yourself with this. The good die young, while the wicked live to 1,000. Pei Jingxi was speechless. He wanted to argue that his lord was a good person, but he realized that by Chubuchu's logic, he'd be cursing him to die before his time. Chubuchu and Feng Xiao were nemeses, forced to share a narrow road. When they were together, they couldn't be comfortable unless the other was needling each other. Unless they were needling each other. Pei Jingxi had long grown numb to their antics. He's so used to their BS, he's like, I don't even care anymore. Sir, there's something I don't understand. None of the assassins they've sent have been especially skilled. They don't seem like the 13 floors of Yunhai's style. Shouldn't they have much more potent methods? Or have I overestimated them? You haven't overestimated them. Chubuchu finally put down the book. Those assassins were not from the 13 floors of Yunhai. What do you mean? Chubuchu raised 2 fingers. Yang Yun and the 13 floors are not working as closely as it appears. Since their arrival in Guangqian Commandery, the enemy had made several moves. They'd held a banquet to win over Rongqing, then killed Huang Lue preemptively and blamed it on the censor. They'd severely wounded Guan Shanhai at Qixia Villa, stalked Feng Xiao, and even tampered with Chubuchu's array, then sent a series of incompetent assassins one after another. Sometimes the moves were brilliant, outmaneuvering Chubuchu and his allies at every turn. Yet at other times they were painfully mediocre, even foolish. It was clear these were not the work of the same mind. Yang Yun and Xiao Lu are cooperating, but there's no master-subordinate relationship here. Yang Yun has his own plans and won't obey Xiao Lu without question, while Xiao Lu is keeping a low profile and waiting for the right opportunity. He's exceptionally patient. He either doesn't attack at all or he holds nothing back. The assassins must therefore be Yang Yun's doing. We're at a disadvantage now, he continued, but Yang Yun doesn't know that. He's unsure what cards we have up our sleeve, so he's testing us to find our limits. Once he's confident we can't retaliate, he'll swoop in to annihilate us. He won't allow us to return to the capital alive. But just because Yang Yun takes action doesn't mean Xiao Lu will too. Yang Yun is itching to get started, but Xiao Lu is in no hurry. He's still our most dangerous enemy. Yeah, critiquing your would-be assassins is definitely pretty cheeky, Truffle. I agree. I wouldn't quite say shameless, but yes, very cheeky. Now Pei Jingxi understood the strange feeling he couldn't put his finger on before. In just a few words, Chubuchu had smoothed away the doubts he couldn't articulate. So we should wait for Xiao Lu to act? Chubuchu shook his head. Xiao Lu is still biding his time because Yang Yun has yet to make his killing move. Yang Yun will definitely exhaust his strength to bury me here. My lord hasn't returned yet, and Guang Shanhai is missing. Pei Jingxi looked grave. The 2 Shuyu guards who came with you have also been sent off. Now only I, Qiao Xian, and 2 eagle riders remain in this relay station. 0 out of 10, do not hire this guy again. We can handle 5 or 6 assassins, but Yang Yun might have far more than that. If he sends a dozen, things will get difficult. Chubuchu left. A dozen. Now you're underestimating Yang Yun. He's been operating in Guangqian Commandery for 3 years. He used the grain provided by the court and the money from the prominent families here to fund a private army. He will have also benefited from his cooperation with Xiao Le. A few assassins, the fire, those were all just tests. Yang Yun might not be able to mobilize an entire county's wealth of soldiers, but a few hundred people will be more than enough to besiege this small courtyard and lay waste to it. The longer Pei Jingzi listened, the paler his face grew. Then, should I go search for our lord now? For my lord now, not ours. Chubachu smiled thinly. I'm afraid it's too late. He'd hardly finished when Pei Jingzi heard a deep rumble like muffled thunder. It rolled in from the distance, but the final thunderclap never came. With a start, he realized that it wasn't thunder at all. It was the sound of mounted soldiers galloping toward them. From the sound alone, there were several hundred at least. On the battlefield, a few hundred soldiers would be engulfed in an instant. But those numbers were more than enough to surround a relay station and kill a handful of people. It was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Beginning to wonder about Guangshanhai. I honestly don't know what to think anymore. There's so much backstabbing. Pei Jingzi was an above-average martial artist and might even be considered a second-tier expert. But in the face of such a large force, even he might not be able to flee safely, let alone bring Chubuchu and Rongqing out with him. And I think we found out about the refugees. Several methods of escape flashed through his mind and were promptly discarded. Chu Xiansheng, we have two options. Either you can make a run for it while Qiao Xian and I protect you, or you can hide in the cellar with Censor Rong while we deal with them. You can come out once the coast is clear. Pei Jingzi's voice quivered slightly with nerves. The thunder of hooves grew closer and closer. The soldiers would be outside the door at any moment. The Spider-Man meme, but it's just all traitors, right? No, Chubuchu said. That's too cowardly. It lacks boldness. Pei Jingzi thought he was going mad. At a time like this, preserving your life should be good enough. What boldness do you need? Loud, he asked, exasperated. Then do you have any better ideas? Chubuchu cocked his head and thought for a moment. How about I use my peerless grace to make them kneel and beg for mercy? Face blank, Pei Jingzi wondered for a moment if Chubuchu was actually Feng Xiao in disguise. Yeah, that's pretty shameless. So 93. Someone pounded on the door, the sound shaking the whole building on this silent night. The doors of every house around the relay station were shut tight. No one was willing to lose their life for the sake of a little curiosity. Pei Jingzi was so anxious his teeth were chattering. He was just about to drop everything and stuff Chubuchu into the cellar with Rongqing when Chubuchu rose and smoothed out the wrinkles in his clothes. I jest. That's what your oleander spirit would say. Let's go. Go where? Pei Jingzi asked automatically. To welcome our guests. Rongqing trailed after them without saying a word. He'd experienced all sorts of ups and downs over the past few days, enough stormy waves to make up for the past 20 years of smooth sailing. He'd gone from panic and terror to a calm that was almost numb. But his mind had also grown much clearer, and he was no longer prone to the same impulsivity. Xiao Liu's death had prompted him to think much more deviously about how to deal with the enemy. He was willing to give up decision-making power and let Chubuchu give orders. In any case, even if he screamed his throat raw right now, no one would listen to him. Their enemy continued to pound on the door, seemingly about to break in at any moment. Outside, Yang Yun was sitting high astride a horse. He raised a hand, and the banging on the door stopped. Chu, I know you're inside. As long as you surrender yourself, everyone else will be safe. He didn't need to shout. The night was so quiet, he was certain Chu could hear him. The only reason he hadn't simply broken down the door was a fear of walking into one of Chu's traps. He'd heard much about the insidious Shu Yui bureau chief, but had never dealt with him directly. Many of the tales had come from the 13 floors of Yunhai themselves. At the thought of the 13 floors, Yang Yun felt a spike of annoyance. Just as Chu had surmised, the relationship between Yang Yun and the 13 floors was not that of a subordinate and a superior, but one of mutual cooperation. Bluntly, they were using each other. When the 13 floors of Yunhai had first approached him, they had taken a fancy to his restless ambition and proposed a grand plan for him. But Yang Yun was wary of inhibiting his own plans and uninterested in becoming a puppet dancing on their strings. Thus, he had carefully negotiated a relationship of cooperation. In this way, he hoped to leverage the power of the 13 floors of Yunhai to pave a path for himself without becoming overly involved with them. But the members of the 13 floors of Yunhai weren't fools. Yang Yun had flouted them one too many times. Since the day before yesterday, they'd cut off communications with him. Yang Yun didn't know whether they would deal with Chu and Rongqing. If he wanted them buried here, he'd have to do it himself. Behind Yang Yun was Wu Yi on his own horse. Li Yan had not appeared. He was fearful and weighed down by his worries, but Wu Yi had more courage. From the moment he'd thrown in his lot with Yang Yun, he'd known he'd boarded a ship he could never step off. And after Huang Lue's death, he'd become even more certain that if he wished to survive this, he had to pray for smooth sailing for Yang Yun. Governor, why not shoot some flaming arrows in first? Wu Yi suggested. Yang Yun gave a slight nod. Wu Yi waved his men over and was about to give the order when the door of the relay station creaked open. Through the gap, they could see that the interior was bright with lamplight. The man they were all looking for, Chu, was sitting at a small table in the courtyard. A tea set was laid out before him, the cups filled and steaming. Chu raised his teacup and greeted Yang Yun from his seat. The rain has stopped, and the flood should recede in a few days. Is Governor Yang interested in sharing some tea with me in celebration of the heavens finally smiling upon us? Your lordship, don't fall into his trap, Wu Yi whispered hurriedly. He's trying to provoke you. No, if he was trying to provoke you, you would be very provoked. Of course, Yang Yun had no intention of accepting his invitation. He sneered. Chu, chief of the Shu Yui Bureau, your reputation precedes you. It's a pity that you'll die here tonight. If you're trying to convince me I'm walking into an ambush, it's no use. He had no intention of listening to Chu's prattle. He raised a hand, and the archers flanking him climbed atop the walls. Instantly, dozens of arrows were aimed at Chu. When Yang Yun's hand came down, the arrows would fly, and Chu would be no more. The doors surrounding the courtyard were tightly closed. Rongqing, Pei Jingzi, and the rest sat inside looking at each other. Chu had forbidden them to come out into the courtyard. In a situation like this, it made no difference how many of them confronted the enemy, unless they were all martial artists on par with Feng Xiao. That man could go anywhere he pleased, ignoring a rain of arrows or a forest of spears. But there was only one Feng Xiao. Listening to the voices outside, Rongqing's heart leapt into his throat. If he were Chubu, what would he do to escape such a dangerous situation? He thought and thought, but came up completely empty. Chubu had enough time to say one or two sentences at most. If he used them to appeal to the archers' consciences and tried to convince them to switch sides, he'd die before he even finished speaking. What else could he do? Was there another way? Pei Jingzi was also thinking hard. Could Chu be waiting for Feng Xiao and Guang Shanhai to return and launch a surprise attack? But that was impossible. Even if Feng Xiao rushed over this instant, he couldn't arrive in time to snatch Chu out from under the arrows bristling from the tops of the walls. What card was Chu holding that he'd thrown away any chance of resistance or escape and instruct them to stay where they were? Surely he didn't believe he could save them by sacrificing himself. If Yang Yun dared to kill the Shuuyue bureau chief, the rest of them went without saying. Pei Jingzi's eyes were closed, his forehead beaded with sweat. His palms were clammy, his face so twisted with nerves it hardly seemed human. He opened his eyes and looked at Qiao Xian and Rongqing. Their faces were ashen. Qiao Xian's jaw was clenched, her body tense as if she might charge outside at any moment. But because Chu had ordered her to stay put, and Pei Jingzi had struck her acupoint for good measure, she remained silent. The three of them looked more wretched than Chu sitting outside, but none of them were in the mood to laugh at themselves. They stared at the closed window with such intensity that their eyes were practically burning a hole in the paper. This was the critical moment. Chu had one shot. That'd be such a mean thing to do, to just end it there. What time? Although I was waiting for, and that's where we're ending tonight. I was tempted, but no, we still have 2 more chapters. All right. 156. 30. 6:30. All right. Chapter 145. Always on a cliffhanger with this series. It's a special day when we don't end on a cliffhanger. That is very true. Okay. Chapter 145. Chu was besieged on all sides. He sat calmly under the stairs of the army, the steel arrows glinting bright above him, in the moment between life and death. He only had time to say 2 sentences, so that was what he did. The first was, "Have you visited the commandery prison lately?" Followed by, "When you set out, did you leave enough men to guard your study?" The first sentence made Yang Yun frown. At the second, his eyes went wide in shock. His raised hand remained frozen in the air. "Governor!" Wu Yi urged him from behind. "What did you do?" Yang Yun knew he should bring his hand down regardless and have Chu turned into a pincushion, but for some reason he hesitated. "Governor!" Wu Yi was so anxious he yearned to grab Yang Yun's hand and yank it down himself. Chubu-chu! Yang Yun roared. Chubu-chu smiled. Scared, Governor Yang? The truly ambitious felt no fear. Power was their ultimate pursuit, even if it meant putting their own lives on the line. Liu Bang, the founder of the Han Dynasty, was the greatest exemplar. When his political opponent, Xiang Yu, had kidnapped Liu Bang's father, wife, and children and threatened to boil them alive, Liu Bang had calmly responded by asking Xiang Yu to leave him a sip of the soup. Chubu-Chu had initially thought Yang Yun was such a person. He had no children of his own and a discordant relationship with his wife, all in order to minimize his weaknesses and avoid being manipulated and threatened. But upon meeting him face to face, Chubu-Chu knew at once that he'd overestimated him. The man might not care about continuing his family line, but he cared about himself very much. Yang Yun was over 30 years old, with a short mustache and a neatly trimmed beard. Even on such a stormy night, his hair and clothes were meticulously groomed, as if he couldn't stand untidiness. His position among his men was also telling. Guards flanked him, but no one stood behind him. If he encountered any danger, he could quickly retreat into the circle of his guards to ensure his safety. Here was a person who both valued his appearance and cherished his life. He loved himself most of all, so a wife and children didn't matter. As long as he was well, that was enough. Governor Yang, I presume you only wanted to skim off some grain and sell it for a little profit. You never meant to go this far, did you? Chubu-Chu said. The instant Yang Yun failed to bring his hand down, Chubu-Chu knew he'd found his weakness. Now he could turn the tide. If he had only misappropriated a little rice, you could repent to his majesty. The worst you would suffer is a dismissal and a whipping. But a revolt is different. You were using the 13 floors of Yunhai, but you didn't know they were also using you. They've led you step by step into a trap, allowing the situation to escalate until you are pushed to the edge of the cliff. Now you have no choice but to do what they want. Kill him! Wu Yi roared. Kill this invalid! He's making up lies! What's so frightening about that? He charged forward with the blade in hand, raising it high and slashing toward Chubu-Chu. Pei Jingzi! Chubu-Chu shouted. Almost before he said it, Pei Jingzi was rushing out of the house. Wu Yi was far slower than an arrow and was quickly knocked to the ground. Pei Jingzi pinned him down and set a blade to his neck. The archers on the wall should have shot Chubu-Chu the moment Wu Yi charged. Yet instead, they were craning their necks to look behind them, their faces filled with surprise. Their formations quickly fell apart. In the darkness whence they'd come, pinpoints of light shone, though no one had seen them appear. They grew bigger and bigger, brighter and brighter, transforming from scattered sparks into clusters of flame. Shouts accompanied the lights, rolling toward them like rumbling thunder. The source of the commotion was a little distance away, growing no closer to the relay station, yet Yang Yun's face went ashen. He knew where that howling, surging tide was headed. The commandery governor's residence. For 2 years now, you used the tax exemption donation policy to lie to the court. You conspired with wealthy households to share the spoils and make a handsome profit. Had you been willing to stop there, you wouldn't have found yourself in this disastrous situation. But the human heart is never content, is it? And this year, something unexpected happened. The rain was much heavier than anticipated. The court sent relief grain, but you were greedy and kept every sack. Tens of thousands were displaced. In their desperation, they flocked to the city and almost caused a riot. At the same time, the court sent a censor to oversee relief efforts. Terrified that the longer you waited, the more likely it was that you'd be exposed, you decided to finish what you'd started and killed the refugees. There were too many of you for you to murder them all. You shut the remainder inside the prison. You planned to wait until the censor left to finish the job, so you could pretend those civilians tragically drowned in the floods. With them dead, you wouldn't need to cough up the grain either, thus killing two birds with one stone. All would be well. Chibuchu spoke rapidly, laying out Yang Yun's plans as if he had witnessed every step himself. Yet more horrifying than Chibuchu's analysis was the reckless gambit he'd chosen. Along with the refugees, he'd also released the prisoners on death row who had been mixed with them, leading them all to attack the commandery governor's residence. That's cheeky. That's very, very cheeky. Dangerous, but cheeky. Yang Yun had brought men here to kill Chubuchu, yet now his own home was being destroyed. All those desperate prisoners and refugees needed was for someone to open the prison doors and shout a suggestion. Perhaps that the residents had food and that an imperial envoy would protect them if anything happened. They must have rushed to the residence in a flurry and gone in a frenzy to ransack the place. Chubuchu's men would surely be among them, and in the study they'd find. The clamor rose around them, louder and louder. Civilians in their homes, who'd been too afraid to come out, now couldn't resist cracking open their windows and peeking outside. Howls split the air. Yang Yun heard the sound of swords and spears clanging. The mob must have taken the prison guards' weapons. Yang Yun had brought almost every guard and soldier with him, leaving only a few men to watch over the commandery governor's manor. He hadn't anticipated Chubuchu would be ruthless enough to use the indirect approach to solve his predicament, hoping to draw Yang Yun's army away from the relay station. If the governor's residence was destroyed, all the secrets he had hidden there would be destroyed with it. Yang Yun's bloodshot eyes bulged. He glared viciously at Chubuchu as if staring down an enemy he'd sworn revenge on for killing his father. Do you know what will happen now that those refugees are released? All of Guangqiang County will suffer thanks to this. Chubuchu, do you intend to become the villain who brought calamity to Guangqiang for your own selfish gain? Such absurd words, twisting truth into lies, yet Yang Yun shouted them with self-righteous conviction. The panic-stricken soldiers were whispering among themselves. None of them had any attention to spare for Yang Yun's pompous blustering. The scene in the distance grew more chaotic. Flames licked into the sky from the governor's residence, accompanied by thick, billowing smoke. Yang Yun had to do something. Even if Chubuchu held all of Yang Yun's secrets in his hand, if the man was dead, he would never have a chance to tell them. Archers, release the... Before he could say arrows, his voice died like a throttled rooster, wide-eyed and instantly mute. A blade was pressed firmly against his neck. Screams rose from all around. Everyone stumbled back from Yang Yun and his assailant, a man wearing the armor of a commandery guard. He raised his head slightly, revealing the face under his helmet. Guan Shanhai. While the riots in the city had distracted the soldiers, Guang Shanhai had taken the opportunity to sneak through their ranks. Everyone's eyes were on the refugees occupying the governor's residence, thus no one had noticed as he quietly approached Yang Yun and got close enough to threaten him. As agony spread through Yang Yun's neck, he realized his assailant truly meant to kill him. Desperate to save himself, he shouted, "Stop!" That single cry revealed his thoughts. Now Chubuchu was even more certain he had made the right move. Yang Yun was confident as long as his enemies feared death. Only when they didn't fear it did he become afraid. Chubuchu looked around. "Put down your weapons and surrender," he said coldly. "The culprit will be held accountable, but those who merely followed orders will go unpunished." The surrounding soldiers were rattled by the commotion in the city and had begun to panic as well. Other than Yang Yun's few confidants, the rest of his men had no unwavering loyalty to him. As for his personal guards, now that he had been captured, they didn't stand in the doorway. She'd been a step too late to catch Wu Yi after residence. While she'd been mired in indecision, while others thought Chubuchu completely helpless, he had already laid out the entire game of chess and predetermined the results. Even Rong Qing finally came in handy. That's a little harsh to Rong Qing. I mean, he's trying. He's not doing a great job. He's overwhelmed in a situation far beyond his control. But that's a little hard. His control. But that's a little harsh. He stepped forward, full of righteous fervor, and strenuously denounced Yang Yun, then promised not to prosecute anyone else present. At his impassioned speech, the archers finally lowered their bows, and rank after rank of the surrounding soldiers followed suit, throwing down their weapons. At last, only Yang Yun's personal guards were left. No power remained to him. Jiao Xian had thought she had a thorough understanding of Chubuchu's abilities, but at that moment, she realized even she had underestimated him. Lately, Chubuchu had cooperated frequently with Feng Xiao. The sight of Deputy Chief Feng beside him, flashy and ostentatious, gave many the illusion that the success of their collaboration relied more on Feng Er's martial arts than Chubuchu's intelligence. After all, no one could turn a blind eye to Feng Xiao's dazzling appearance. Even the members of the 13 floors of Yunhai had focused more of their efforts on Feng Xiao. When he realized he had underestimated his enemy, it was too late. As if sensing Xiao Xian's eyes on him, Chubuchu turned and met her gaze. When did your lordship send people to the county prison?" Xiao Xian asked her next question with great difficulty. "Why didn't you tell us?" "In illusion lies truth. In truth lies illusion." Chubuchu's expression was inscrutable. No one had noticed the disappearance of the two Shu Yue guards who had accompanied them. Their martial arts were mediocre, and they couldn't be of much help. At most, they could run errands. It hadn't been surprising that they were scarce for several days. Even Xiao Xian hadn't thought much of their departure. But when Yang Yun charged over in readiness to kill, those two guards had been enough to launch a sneak attack on the county prison and release the refugees and prisoners. Xiao Xian should have been first to hear of this plan, yet she'd been kept in the dark, reduced to the same level as Rong Qing. Her breath hitched at the thought. Xiao Xian should have been the first to hear this plan, yet she had been kept in the dark, reduced to the same level as Rong Qing. Her breath hitched at the thought, and her eyes met Chubuchu's clear and frigid gaze. She suddenly felt cold all over. "Lord Chief, you knew everything." Chubuchu didn't answer her unspoken question. He didn't even give her a second glance. Instead, he turned, his cloak billowing skyward, and resolutely brought his hand down, completing the gesture Yang Yun had failed to perform. "By authority of the Emperor, seize Yang Yun's guards." as effortless as blowing away dust. Yang Yun's face was ashen. He swayed on his feet, watching his personal guards scream and fall to the ground as they were stabbed in the chest. Defeat was as contagious as any disease. Their morale shattered instantly, not least because the man they were loyal to was still in the hands of the enemy. Considering the matter mostly settled, Pei Jingzi bound Wu Yi's arms behind his back and went to help Guang Shanhai deal with Yang Yun. When he saw Chuba Chu had mounted too. Oh. Night Truffle. I'm sorry. Do you want me to reset it? I can reset it. Well, I guess good night. All right. Xiaoxian hesitated for a moment. She didn't take Pei Jingzi's hand. Instead, she leapt lightly onto the horse behind him and gathered up the reins. Hia! Pei Jingzi was stunned. He suddenly felt that his and Xiaoxian's roles were reversed, and that he looked more like the beautiful woman being protected in her sturdy arms. Xiaoxian didn't notice his awkwardness and only saw him looking around. She frowned. What are you looking at? Stop fidgeting so much. Strange. Where's my lord? Pei Jingzi couldn't locate the deputy chief's familiar face in the crowd. No matter how perilous Feng Yun Tavern was, Feng Xiao had been gone for most of the day. Surely he should have been back by now. To think that from the start to finish, Feng Xiao had played no role in this incident. So he's indirectly calling him a chaos gremlin. When Feng Xiao had walked into Feng Yun Temple or Tavern some hours ago, the sky was a bruised mixture of purples and blues, the golden glow of sunset clinging to the horizon. The tavern had only one floor, and the smell of wine wafted out into the street. A handful of people, perhaps 10 in total, sat scattered around 3 or 4 tables, chatting in low voices. No one looked up at Feng Xiao's arrival. They kept talking among themselves, paying him no mind, as if he didn't exist at all. Feng Xiao was instantly displeased. He was a grand, dignified, elegant, dashing, peerless young man. If he was second best, no one could claim to be first. He had never been ignored like this. Shamelessness 94. He settled himself down, cross-legged, and slapped a hand on the table. Where's the owner? The waiters? Are you all dead? Serve the wine! Perhaps his attitude was too abrasive because the other guests finally looked over at him. Feng Xiao smiled gleefully. Others were afraid of the limelight, but he reveled in it. Not only was he not annoyed at being scrutinized by strangers, he even flashed them a toothy grin. The waiter rushed over with a jar of wine. How can I help you, sir? Landling wine! The waiter looked troubled. My apologies, sir, but we have no Landling wine here. Landling is too far away. Then what kind of wine do you have? Just bring up some good wine. I have plenty of money, if nothing else. The waiter raised the jar he was holding. The best-selling wine here is Amber Light. Would your lordship care to try it? Feng Xiao smiled. I don't want to drink Amber Light. I want to drink Landling wine. If there's no Landling wine, give me some penalty wine. Yeah, I read that right. Give me some penalty wine. The waiter looked baffled. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered a customer trying to pick a fight, but it was certainly the first time he'd encountered a customer who said he wanted to drink penalty wine. You're not going to say you don't even have penalty wine, are you? Feng Xiao asked. The corner of the waiter's mouth twitched. I'm sorry, sir, but we really don't have such a thing. Oh. I guess they had a little thing. Oh, I missed the little annotation. Wine someone must drink as a forfeit for refusing a toast, used as an idiom for doing something the hard way. Okay. Feng Xiao's expression modulated from joy to anger in the blink of an eye. He threw up his hands, overturned the table, and the porcelain plates, cups, and bowls all clattered as they fell to the floor. What kind of rotten tavern are you running where you don't have anything worth serving? He grabbed for the waiter's throat, but the waiter showed no sign of panic. The man hurled the jar of wine at Feng Xiao and twisted to avoid the attack. At the same time, the seated guests all rose in unison. So I know he's probably an assassin, but that is still pretty disrespectful to a service worker. So we're going to pop that down, and it's 39. Feng Xiao releasing his inner Karen on this poor waiter. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's an assassin, but I still marked it down. Okay. At the same time, the seated guests all rose in unison, some bare-handed and some wielding weapons. They leapt towards Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao laughed loudly and shot into the air. Ha 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 ha! Quick as lightning, he avoided their attacks and caught the waiter. Then he slowed, transitioning from an arrow to a feather as he landed lightly in the rafters overlooking everyone below. You laid such an inescapable trap, yet Xiao Lu is still too scared to show his face, he jeered. To deal with you, the 11 first-tier martial artists here are plenty. Familiar voice called out. There's no need for the pavilion leader to appear himself. Yuan Sanxi strolled out of the rear hall and stood with his hands behind his back. Surprise appearance? Feng Xiao was so high up that Yuan Sanxi had to bend his neck back to speak to him. Apparently dissatisfied with the lack of intimidation factor, he followed Feng Xiao's lead and jumped up into the rafters as well. A familiar face, Feng Xiao called. Lao Yuan. It's been so many days since we parted, and you've grown thin. Could Xiao Lu have been so upset with your failure at Mount Tiannan that he refused to feed you? Hearing Feng Xiao gaily rubbing salt in his wound, Yuan Sanxi exploded with fury. At Mount Tiannan, Fan Yun's betrayal and the actions of the Shu Yue and Jiajian Bureau had severely weakened the 13 floors of Yunhai. The position of Commandery Governor Yuan Sanxi had painstakingly worked toward for many years had also been ripped from him. He was left with no choice but to adopt a new identity and retreat into the shadows. After spending so many years basking in the light, how could he possibly be pacified with some expensive clothes and delicacies? He snorted coldly. Feng Xiao, can you believe Chubuchu knew this was a trap, yet still asked you to come? I believe it. Feng Xiao's smile was radiant. I believe in your mother's ass. It's a weird phrase. Before he had finished speaking, he was rushing toward Yuan Sanxi. The 11 masters watched hungrily from the tavern floor. They were waiting for any sign of weakness from Feng Xiao, ready to seize their chance, to dart in and kill him in a single blow. All right, down to our last chapter. On 46. Yuan, wait, time. 2:23:23. Chapter 146. Yuan Sensi recalled something a senior from his sect had once told him. When 5 martial arts masters had besieged Huan Yue sect leader Yan Wuxi, name drop! It hadn't mattered how formidable he was. Under their combined assault, he had nearly lost his life. At present, Feng Xiao faced not just the formidable enemy Yuan Sensi, but 11 other first-tier martial artists. Even the most skilled grandmaster in the world would find themselves as helpless as Yan Wuxi in this situation. That's not a great comparison because Yan Wuxi got away. Helpless as Yan Wuxi in this situation. That's not a great comparison because Yan Wuxi got away. Like, he was beat to high hell and had his skull broken, but, like, he lived. And he came back. Like, there's a bit of irony in that statement. The pavilion leaders had given orders that Chu Chu was to be spared, but Feng Xiao should be killed. There was no need to hold back. Feng Xiao must die. The 11 experts moved in sync with Yuan Sensi. No matter what, Feng Xiao would meet his end today. There was no chance he'd walk out of this tavern. He only died a little, right, Annika? Although the tavern door was open, no one with eyes would dare enter upon seeing the commotion within. As it was, people in the city could barely feed themselves after the recent downpour and flooding. No one was in the mood to come in for a drink. Yet, as the battle unfolded in the rafters, someone did walk through the door. He wore black robes and a black cloak, and his pace and demeanor were leisurely, as he fanned himself and looked around. The 11 experts all turned to stare. But not only did they fail to teach this uninvited guest, who'd foolishly overestimated himself, a lesson, their expressions went strange, as if they had seen a ghost. The sky wasn't yet fully dark, though night was closing in. It was the time when monsters, ghosts, and demons come out to roam. The uninvited guest acted as if nothing was amiss, not even glancing up at the rafters. He chose a seat and sat down, tapping the table with his fan. Such a fine tavern, yet no one selling any wine. His appearance and voice were identical to Feng Xiao's. Could it be that the first Feng Xiao was an imposter, and the Feng Xiao who'd just come in was the real one? It wasn't just the 11 experts who were staring. Yuan Sensi also caught sight of the newcomer. One person might wonder if his wasn't just the 11 experts who were staring. Yuan Sensi also caught sight of the newcomer. One person might wonder if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but if all 12 of them saw it, it must be so. There really were 2 identical Feng Xiaos. There are a number of plots tonight where I'm just like, where did you come up with this? Like, I mean, this is the reason I love Danmei, is like they pull out crazy schemes like this, but I'm just like, what? I mean, I know that's how they're feeling too, is like, what? Okay. It wasn't just the 11 experts who were staring. Yuan Sensi also caught sight of the newcomer. One person might wonder if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but if all 12 of them saw it, it must be so. There really were 2 identical Feng Xiaos. In a duel between experts, nothing was more important than maintaining focus. Yuan Sensi spared only a quick glance at the new Feng Xiao, but that was enough. Faster than the blink of an eye, someone slipped through the gaps between his palm attacks, and zither string shot soundlessly toward his face. Yuan Sensi moved to block without a second thought, but his foe attacked him from the other side too. Pain throbbed through his shoulder, and he groaned and stumbled, falling from the rafters. Before his feet touched the ground, he slung himself around a pillar and swept toward Feng Xiao once more. At the same time, the 11 masters all rushed toward the other Feng Xiao, who stood as stolidly as a mountain. The second Feng Xiao laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha! He didn't want to meet them head on, but flitted behind the wine jar cabinets. Amid the palm blasts and flashing blades, the wine jars fell and shattered, their contents sloshing onto the floor. The wine's rich fragrance poured into the martial expert's lungs with every inhale, filling them with a rush of intoxication. Many of these martial experts possessed a keen sense of smell. The two Feng Xiao shared an identical stature and voice, but there was subtle differences in their scents. Thanks to the wine jar shattering, the aroma of wine clung to everyone, making them wholly indistinguishable. A new silhouette appeared in the doorway. Another Feng Xiao. This time, no one was shocked. The third Feng Xiao laughed brightly. Ha 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 ha! What a coincidence, Lao Yuan. Have you been well? Yuan Sansi didn't deign to respond. He and the Feng Xiao fighting in the rafters separated and landed, one on either side of the roof. Three Feng Xiaos. One in the rafters, one standing on the wine jar fragments, and one in the doorway. The three were indistinguishable. Who could be certain that there wouldn't be a fourth? Yuan Sansi gave a sneering laugh. Petty tricks. Feng Xiao, you always saw yourself as better than everyone else, yet you resort to such methods to keep yourself alive. Of course, three Feng Xiaos couldn't really exist. It had to be a disguise. Even if no one could distinguish between them from their appearances alone, the three Feng Xiaos couldn't possibly all wield the same signature weapon. Lao Yuan, said the Feng Xiao at the door. You brought 11 people to ambush me, but you won't allow me to use any helpers. What's that they say? State officials are allowed to set fires, but the common folk aren't allowed to light a lamp. The Feng Xiao in the rafters sighed. Ah, now look how you've embarrassed him. The 13 floors of Yunhai have already used up all their tricks. There, I'll show the picture first. Hang on, I'm trying to show all of them. There we go. And again, the sparkles are back. The Feng Xiao standing beside the wine cabinet laughed arrogantly. Feng Xiao standing beside the wine cabinet laughed arrogantly. Ha 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 ha! Xiao Lu doesn't have the courage to face us himself. He's pushed you out as a pawn instead. Lao Yuan, as one of the most vital members of the organization, don't you feel frustrated? Yeah, their faces are great. Haha, and we thought one Feng Xiao was insufferable. Yuan Sensi turned a deaf ear. He swooped down from the rafters like a diving falcon, wind and lightning behind him. One palm became 10, 10 became 1,000, until hundreds of thousands of after-images howled toward Feng Xiao from all directions. Night had fallen, and the tavern lanterns swayed as the wind gusted in. The candle flames wavered, casting their flickering light over the chaotic interior. The 11 masters melted into shadows as they swept toward the two Feng Xiaos on the ground. Each held unique weapons and had differing proficiencies in Qigong, the swiftest quickly taking the lead. The ones who were a half step behind would forever be grateful for the inferiority of their skills. It saved their lives. The Feng Xiao beside the cabinet leapt into the air, his palm strikes surging with a force that could topple mountains as he confronted the three rushing toward him. The Feng Xiao at the door smoothly unshouldered the zither on his back. Bolstered by his qi, the instrument soared into the air and spun rapidly until a slender yet powerful hand steadied it. Fingers plucked the strings and music poured out. Though the notes were monotonous, the energy-infused sound waves had already reached their target. The three foremost martial experts felt blood trickle from their ears as their heads began to ring, filled only with a single sound. Like a blizzard of snowflakes or a ferocious downpour, the noise reached its crescendo before abruptly cutting off, leaving silence behind. Blood poured from their noses and mouths as the world spun around them, their movements becoming sluggish. The zither-wielding Feng Xiao snorted coldly, but to them this small sound was like the ringing of a great bronze bell, striking them squarely in the chest. Their bodies went rigid as Feng Xiao struck them with the zither, the force behind their blades instantly falling away. Twice he swung the zither, then 3 times. None were spared as they screamed and went flying. Up in the rafters, Yuan Sensi was still embroiled in combat with the first Feng Xiao when he noticed the situation on the ground. His lips curled. When Feng Xiao had pretended to join the 13 floors of Yunhai, he had relayed his background to the other directors. Yuan Sensi knew he was the leader of the Fajing sect and that this sect was unique among the 3 demonic sects for using zithers as weapons. The Feng Xiao on the ground was wielding the zither masterfully, so there was no doubt that he was the real one. The man in front of him was an obvious fake. 2 cold rays of light flew from Yuan Sensi's sleeves, one arcing toward his foe's neck and the other sweeping in from behind toward his foe's danshin, his lower abdomen. Feng Xiao dropped down, but Yuan Sensi had anticipated this move too. A sneer hung on his lips as he raised a hand and shot a 3rd ray of light. The wind from his palm followed, whistling down toward the top of Feng Xiao's head. Feng Xiao was mid-fall. He shouldn't be able to call upon his internal energy now. Even if he managed to withstand Yuan Sensi's assault, he'd have no chance to counterattack. Once that palm hit, it would either shatter his skull or leave him gravely injured, throwing his blood and qi into chaos. Someone screamed nearby. Feng Xiao's dark cloak flared as he soared upward like a black-feathered phoenix, only to swoop down toward the ground. It was a sight as arrogant as it was dazzling, unmatched in glory. The string in his hand was as sharp as any blade, capable of cleaving stone and steel. 2 heads rolled to the floor. Feng Xiao remained unyielding, his speed and momentum unstoppable as he lunged forward. The tavern was like the swirling maelstrom at the beginning of time. Wherever his black robe swept, a crimson trail followed in his wake. He sliced through the primordial chaos, and thousands of ghosts howled in the desolate night. The metallic stink of blood had come to overshadow the fragrance of wine. Feng Xiao was merciless in his attack. The 11 first-tier experts became nothing but novices before his onslaught, unable to keep up or fight back. The 3 Feng Xiaos seemed to overlap before separating again, as if he had truly split himself into 3. Could there really be 3 Feng Xiaos? One of the 11 thought in a daze. The man's surname was Zhu, given name Yi Qing. He hailed from the Songsheng sect and wielded a sword. The Songsheng sect wasn't a large one, but Shu Yi Qing was exceptionally talented. At the age of 25, he'd single-handedly defeated the 3 heroes of the Gobi, a triumph that elevated him to fame. Li Palace of Fangshang Isle ranked him 37th on their list. Everyone aspired to be the strongest in the world, and he'd made it into the top 50. He was no ordinary expert. Tonight, he'd planned to use Feng Xiao's death to propel his reputation to even greater heights. But he'd never anticipated his enemy would be so powerful. Zhu Yi Qing had studied martial arts diligently since childhood, with the goal of becoming renowned throughout the land. Now he knew he'd never achieve this goal in this lifetime. Ghostly shadows danced in the lamplight, dazzled. When the last glimmer disappeared, like a candle snuffed in the wind, Shu Yiqing's vision went dark forever. Around him, the fight went on. The remaining masters knew tonight's battle was a fight to the death. There was no room for compromise or mercy. Feng Xiao had to die. If he didn't, every one of them would die in his stead. Yuan Sensi's palm met one of Feng Xiao's. Qi surged wildly between them. Both men were repelled to opposite sides of the tavern, where they landed firmly on their feet. Yuan Sensi was flagging. His qi and blood were boiling, but he forced himself to swallow the coppery blood down. He didn't know if Feng Xiao was in a similar state, but he didn't dare take the gamble. His certainty in his own victory was gone. Yuan Sensi knew too well that doubt would cause him to falter. He suddenly remembered something the pavilion leader had said to him before he had left. Feng Xiao had used the two sariras, and his martial arts had greatly improved. He was now a formidable nemesis of the 13 floors of Yunhai, who must be eliminated at all cost. Although Yuan Sensi knew Feng Xiao was an excellent martial artist, at the time he'd refused to see that the pavilion leader's words had been a warning to Yuan Sensi himself. Now he had to admit that the pavilion leader was right. Feng Xiao's lightning-fast progress and the prodigious talent prodigious talent were truly unmatched. What was more, he wielded the authority of the Jijian Bureau and shared a peculiar relationship with Chu Chu. Two men, one outstanding in martial arts and the other in wisdom, learning from each other's strengths to bridge their weaknesses. How could the 13 floors leave such a powerful enemy alive? All at once, the tavern went quiet. Even the strong wind outside seemed to have been strangled, unable to make a sound. Including Yuan Sansi, 6 experts remained. As for Feng Xiao, there were still 3 of him. He'd killed half of Yuan Sansi's men. Yuan Sansi's doubts continued to grow. The ability to split oneself into multiple copies was the stuff of myth and legend. It was impossible for Feng Xiao to really create 2 more of himself. There were also very few people at his level of martial arts. Of them, who could or would rush over to willingly play his doppelganger? There had to be differences in their martial arts. Of the 3 opponents, they were certain to have unique weaknesses too. As long as Yuan Sensi could identify the copies and leave them to the other experts while he focused on the real Feng Xiao, his chances of victory would be greatly increased. Yuan Sensi centered himself, closed his eyes, and listened for the enemy's movements in the darkness. The tavern was silent. It was as if even their breathing had stopped. Blood clung to the silk zither string, flowing along until it condensed into a fat drop. Finally, the silk could no longer bear their weight. The drop plinked to the ground. One of the Feng Xiaos made the slightest movement, an unconscious action. This person was the weakest martial artist of the 3. I bet that's Feng Xiao. He doesn't like dirty things. Yuan Sensi whistled, and 2 of the experts leapt forward to attack the Feng Xiao who'd moved. One of the remaining 2 Feng Xiaos couldn't resist darting over to save his companion. That person was also a copy. 3 more experts struck. Yuan Sensi didn't hesitate. He gathered all the cold light in his hands and transformed it into a long sword, lunging toward the last Feng Xiao. The riot at the governor's residence was quickly quelled. The victims and death row prisoners had been locked away for a long time. They were greatly weakened. Under the leadership of the Shu Yui guards, they relied on the strength of their own outrage and the lack of sentries to capture the residents.